Hello, beautifuls. Welcome back to my Chanel and welcome to Goodbye 2024. Good riddance, bitch. Well, my lovelies, sorry for once again doing a little bit of clickbait for you all. I do it every year. It is between Christmas and New Year. I hope you're all having wonderful holidays, no matter where you are in the world. And you're treating yourself with kindness, and you're having something tasty, and you're spending the time with loved ones. I know I am, aren't I, Biscuit?
I look quite pretty.
Well, my lovelies, what a year it has been. This is part of my series that I've been doing for a long time now, actually, on the Chanel, where I kind of recap what's actually happened to me over the last year and how I feel about that. Actually, I guess it's probably best for you to sit down and get comfortably, grab yourself a beverage, and let's talk about 2024, shall we? So I'm going to try and keep it relatively politics-free here in today's video. Unfortunately, politics does have a habit of actively affecting my life, so I will probably touch on it once or twice. So I guess let's start with January. Cast your minds back, my lovelies, to, was there an AI scandal happening in January with Kate Middleton? Do you remember that? It was like,
Kate's gone, she's not been seen, everything's AI, the children.
But what an interesting year it's been. The rise in AI has actually been quite frightening this year, in both a good way and a bad way. I would probably hazard a guess, though, and say a lot of the AI scandals we're seeing, they're pretty bad, aren't they? But January in this year was the first time that I'd actively tried to incorporate a lot more travel and seeing the world within my, career, shall we say. I've always loved travel photography. I've always loved landscape photography. I've always loved the idea of making short films, going out, exploring places and capturing their beauty in a way that's meaningful. And I want to hazard a guess and say I think that actually December last year was the first time that I did it. But another opportunity came across my desk in January of this year, and that was to go as a guest to MegaCon Live and DragCon. And it was a hugely surreal moment for me because let's talk about DragCon first. In the Excel Centre in London, and because I was kind of involved with it, I got lots of backstage experiences and I was there with Roly. So being a guest at these two events was kind of surreal because Sitsi was the usual convention that Roly and I were invited to, Roly a few more times than myself, to speak on LGBT panels, gaming panels, and have meet and greets, which I actually really enjoy being able to see people who are technically, audience fans in real life. I love it. What was kind of surreal though is that when me and Roly were walking around DragCon, the queens would recognize us. The queens would recognize us, call us into their booths and be like, hello girl, let's have a party lol. Binging girls on the game. Anaconda tea or coffee.
Girls on the game.
And I would say I've kind of become quite fun friends mostly online now, but fun friends with some of the queens from Drag Race, which is a very interesting feeling because I've seen these queens on television and to now actually be in line of communication with them, it's just surreal. It's actually really quite lovely. Makes me sometimes look at my own career and go, oh my God, I must be doing something because people are watching and people are recognizing and people are enjoying.
She's kind, she's humble.
We also got to spend time at Novimpia's booth, which was actually really exciting. And do you know what I find funny about the queer community, which I absolutely love? Everyone is so quick-witted. My goodness me. Me and Roly kind of shimmied past the queue just to quickly say something to Novimpia. And not within 12 seconds was there a tweet saying, I was there when Roly and Luxeria pushed in front of me in the queue and it was amazing. And I was like, how dare you? Clocked. Either way, it was actually a really enjoyable experience. And at MegaCon, I got to speak on the LGBT panel about being a content creator. And to be honest, I would quite like to do that again at some point in the future, but obviously a bit busy now, different country living and all that. We'll get onto that later.
You're not a big fan of Danny DeVito, Biscuit? No.
February was a little bit of a chill one for me this year because I had set my sights on leaving the United Kingdom. Multiple different reasons. I have gone into that in a previous video here on the Chanel. To summarize, it is due to concerning things related to trans healthcare and also quality of life and cost of living crisis. But I was invited to the premiere of Mary and George as Callum's +1, and this was a wild event. I actually fully fell in love with this TV show without really realizing that I would. I don't know, the venue that they hosted this premiere in was gorgeous, and Julianne Moore, seeing her like face to face, I was like, oh, this tiny gorgeous woman, how dare she? If you love historical period dramas and like beautiful costuming, but also like kind of more true to life with a little bit of like queer scheming characters within it, it's a really good show and I do recommend the watch. Mary and George, the costuming, costumes. I love it. Also, some of them are quite hideous, but I do love the costumes.
What is that?
March, April, and May of this year were an absolute blur whirlwind of chaos within my life, shall we say. And also absolutely filled with panic because my contract was coming up, like coming to the end of my contract of living in Wembley in London in my apartment. And I had really tried to keep myself on a deadline. My work visa was being processed around this time, and it was all very stressful, and I really didn't think that the timing was going to line up, but I also didn't have a second place lined up to move into in case the timing didn't. So I was like really hoping that the timing would go to plan, and it didn't. Spoiler alert, it didn't quite go to plan, but I did have a pretty solid plan B. This process is one of the most stressful and expensive and long-winded processes I have ever undertaken in my life. I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think you can say that, because moving countries itself is a real task, especially when you have a dog and you run your own business. So I'm going to round it up. I needed so many documents, both sworn and like signed by solicitors, and then like sworn, translated, and signed by solicitors again. And all of these costs just kept adding up really fast. And I was just a little bit like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do this. So I ended up moving out of my Wembley apartment back to my childhood town of Brighton. Well, actually, not to the same place that I was before, slightly outside of Brighton along the coast. It was a little bit overwhelming, both from dealing with like lawyers and solicitors and embassies and visas, but also moving back in my life and having to have everything in storage, getting rid of a lot of my stuff as well, and living back again like in a parent's home, but in like one room. It was a very interesting experience to do that as someone who is in their mid-30s now and also has like a dog and stuff. And it was also another like 2 hours further away from my boyfriend Louis at the time. So that was like a really, in my mind, it was a really difficult thing. And I was like, oh, but it's only going to be for a month, so it'll be fine. 2 months rolled round, 3 months rolled round, 4 months rolled round, and the time just kept getting pushed back and back and back and back and back. And I was starting to get a little bit stressed. Can you tell? Starting to get a little bit stressed. It ended up taking a full 6 months. And a lot of the situation was due to just visa delays. Embassies have this interesting way of saying that something's going to take a certain amount of business days. I believe for my visa, the digital nomad visa, the limit is 10 days unless they ask you for additional documentation. And then that process can go up to and over 45 days. And mine was no difference. In total, it took 6 months for me to get my visa, which was made a little bit more complicated by the fact that I am my own boss and the fact that the company I freelance for, YouTube, is technically not a British entity. That made it even more complicated because I had to speak to several different governments to get proof of this. And each one of those takes time. Love that for me. But during this time, and living in a place that was a little bit less city-oriented, I interestingly had a bizarre mix of free time. Well, it wasn't really additional free time. It was like time that I would usually use doing city things. During this time, in order to keep my sanity intact, I decided to embark on a brand new journey here on YouTube, my second channel, Luxeria Labs. And I'm not going to lie, that has given me another reason to love the YouTube platform. And the reason why I created a second channel for this content was that I wasn't entirely sure how you guys, my audience here, would react if I just suddenly started putting a lot of travel and tech related content on this channel. I don't know. I don't think you would have liked it. You can prove me wrong in the comments if you'd like. But I felt like it was the right decision to make a new home for it and grow that organically from some of the audience I already have who would be interested in watching additional content from me. Initially, it started as an experiment with me trying to get to grips with the idea of AI being integrated into every system of life currently. It's here to stay, unfortunately. It's no longer a question of, and I wanted that channel initially, as I say, to explore my relationship with how things things like generative AI and AI in general can have a positive impact in my life instead of constantly feeling like it's a very negative thing that's suffocating us all. Love that. But it actually quickly evolved into something quite different. It quickly evolved into my love for all things cinematic. You can even see from my collection of cameras here. Oh, my GH6. Oh yeah, she's over there doing a job. I would very much appreciate it if you subscribe to my second channel, Luxeria Labs. The link is in the comments box below. I have made a short film recently about Biscuit. I did a beautiful photo shoot with Biscuit earlier on in the year to put him in a cyberpunk style futuristic photo shoot. If you didn't know, in the before times, before I was a makeup artist and before even I was technically a YouTuber, so we're going back nearly 2 decades here. I actually did my A-levels and a foundation degree in photography. And it was essentially the reason that I moved to London in the first place. I was going to do a fashion photography degree at the London College of Fashion and pursue a career in fashion photography. So in a strange way, Luxeria Labs enables me to reconnect with this like huge passion in my life in a way that this main channel doesn't. Don't get me wrong, I love my channel. I love doing stuff for my main channel. I love talking and critiquing and trying to like relive some millennial experiences by looking through the annals of reality TV history. But I also really like making short films and taking beautiful images. And I love technology. Oh my God, do I love technology. I'm still finding my footings over on my second channel, so I'm sure over the next year or so, you'll see me really develop my own specific taste and feelings on that channel. And it's a little bit rough around the edges. But if you love photography, travel content, even a bit of technology here and there, give it a subscribe. I'll be very, very, very grateful. Right, let's talk about June. My goodness, June. June was a month of many firsts for me. First time turning 35, I must say, obviously, because you only get to turn things once, unless you add VAT. I had the opportunity to visit the YouTube headquarters in San Francisco. And even this trip was a trip of many, many, many firsts for me. It was my first time ever going that far away from home. It was my first time in first class, and let me tell you, my goodness me, is that a lifestyle that you can very much get used to very quickly. Frightening. And it was my first time on the west coast of the USA, which is a bonkers experience, I've got to say. There she is. The Waymo driverless wig. I was actually at the YouTube headquarters for a reason, and I managed to meet some pretty influential people at the company, which was a really interesting experience. To me, again, being able to put names to faces and almost demystify a corporation into like a collection of people. It's a very interesting experience when that starts to happen. But also at the same time, Callum happened to be in California around the same time that I was in San Francisco, and we actually met up for my birthday. How exciting is that? Loved it. So I actually opted to stay a few extra days and just kind of do the touristy thing around San Francisco. I always, if I'm ever given the opportunity of doing like a business trip, I always try and opt to stay 1 day extra or 2 days extra to really understand what the city that I've gone to is like. Because you just don't get those experiences on business trips. With business trips, it's very much like go to an office, but you're just in a different country. Interesting experience if you ever do business trips.
I'm a professional woman.
So again, in a trend of many first things, it was my first time in a driverless car. This was such a strange experience, and I don't know, there's something still a little bit like, ooh, what's gonna happen next? And I know that they have their problems, but my goodness me, it really felt so futuristic, and I just couldn't help but think the entire time that like the UK just could never. On one of these little trips, we took the driverless car to see the windy road in San Francisco, that really famous one with all the gardens and the cars driving around it. And it was such a tourist destination, obviously. It was just wild to think that these are just like people's houses. It's just people's houses. Like people are actually living there whilst also living inside of a tourist destination. Bizarre concept, but it was like that. Seeing the Golden Gate Bridge was also particularly beautiful, and looking over, I think that little island there is called Alcatraz, like just seeing everything and seeing the beautiful forest that's kind of near it, going up into the hills and then like going across the Golden Gate Bridge. It's one of those things I'm going to remember forever, I think. And what's really interesting is I actually spoke to my dad when I got back, and he was like, I was there 65 years before you were. And what a weird, like, interesting, almost shared experience it was. I don't know. It was a really magical, lovely experience. And I couldn't stop saying in every single one of my videos, it's the Golden Gate wig! It's the Golden Gate wig! I don't know why, just insufferable. The strange thing about experiencing more of the world than I ever did, weirdly, when I was in London, was that it made me realise there was a lot of problems in the UK. And this is going to sound a little bit bleak, but I feel like the UK is a struggling economy cosplaying as like a first world developed global superpower. I feel like everyone important knows that it's cosplay because all they seem to do is sell off all the important infrastructures to exploit the public for profit and then purposefully divide the public further by focusing on things that have absolutely no impact on the average person's daily life. It's like they purposefully disguise and detract away from the deepening socioeconomic issues. And looking back at it now, it's sort of solidified in my mind that me leaving was the right choice. But enough of all that, no, it's not all dark and bleak, no. My trip to San Francisco actually highlighted how much of an industry, an active manufacturing industry that California has that I had never seen before in the UK. I know the UK used to have it, no more sis. From my hotel, I could actually see like container ships going underneath the bridge. I don't think it was the Golden Gate Bridge, it was the grey one that's kind of like, if the Golden Gate Bridge is here, it's like the grey one that's over there. And I just really got the sense that like stuff is happening, like things are being made here, things are being imported, things are being exported, like industry just exists. And it was a really, like a bit of like a realization moment that like, I've not had that and I've lived in the UK my whole life. Also, one thing I will never get every time I visit the USA is just how big your buildings are. My goodness, they are huge. Huge buildings, huge. Shortly after my trip to San Francisco, I was actually given another opportunity to have a business trip to Zurich in Switzerland. And my expectations of what I thought Switzerland was were completely shattered, shall we say? Nah. I had no idea how hot it was going to be for something that I assumed, for some reason, I don't know why, my own ignorance, I assumed it was going to be quite an alpine country, quite like chilled, or like coolish temperature. Nope, boiling hot every day, no air conditioning. Not too dissimilar from the UK, I guess, in that aspect. On my second channel, I kind of filmed a little bit of a travel vlog and technology review vlog about my trip to Zurich in Switzerland. So check that out if you want to see more. Yeah. If and when I go back to Switzerland, I would love to spend a little bit more time in like the alpine regions. I keep seeing these gorgeous Instagram reels of just like mountains and lakes and green and forests and like a real idea of like outdoorsy living that's not quite beach vibes where I am now. Don't know, I just want to experience as much as the world has to offer, little old me. The rest of summer was a little bit of a blur this year. It was mostly me just sitting indoors, working really hard on my YouTube channel, trying to grow and expand my content. And aside from that, it actually also involved getting Biscuit ready for this like big life-changing event. The move. He needed some really specific vaccinations before we could actually travel and get his animal healthcare certificate, it's called now. They don't do pet passports in the UK anymore since Brexit. It's all a bit more of a time-constrained process, shall we say. So once you get your animal healthcare certificate, once they've had all the vaccines and the health check leading up to that point, you have 10 days to travel on this animal healthcare certificate. Otherwise, it is invalid. And it's also kind of an expensive document as well. So there is this element of like,
Oh, we need to rush now.
so I wanted to make sure with my vet that we had that put in place when we'd already selected a place to move and we were literally just like final little last little bits like dotting I's and ticking boxes and then going. And I managed to get that to line up nicely, which I was really thankful for. Not a lot else happened really over the summer. It was more of a case of me just like mentally preparing to leave the UK. So I was in a little bit of like kind of sad, kind of happy, kind of sad, like complicated feelings around the whole thing, but ultimately very excited and just kind of wanted it to happen ASAP kind of thing. So let's fast forward, shall we? Let's fast forward. October. Here's my handsome himbo.
Am I on film?
Yeah. My work visa was granted. Literally granted, and my passport was returned to me, and it was the day afterwards, and I was like, oh my God, off we go. Let's go now. Like, we have to go now. So we found a place, and then we started moving. And we have been here now for 1 month and 1 day. But it was a bit of a journey to actually get here. You missed your biscuit. Are you a bit sleepy? Sorry, baby. I just wanted to show you for a little moment. It's his birthday tomorrow. He will be 2 years old. Oh, not a little baby anymore, Mr. Biscuit. But always baby biscuit boy, yes. So because, of course, we had Biscuit, I absolutely categorically did not want to put him in cargo on a flight. There's just something about like the idea of putting your pet in a cage and then having them down with like the bags like underneath you and you can't see them or spend time with them or they don't know what's going on and it's loud and they're screaming and they're upset. Like I did not want to do that for Biscuit. So we ended up actually taking the long way to southern Spain. And it took us 3 days of driving. And I think Biscuit absolutely loved it. He got to go on the Channel Tunnel. So we drove onto that little train and you got to bark at people. You got to bark at the border security and they loved it. They were like, oh, what a pretty boy. Yes, very noisy. Bark, bark, bark. And he got to stay with us in the car as we were driving. And we would stop every couple of hours just to like stretch our legs, get refreshments, let him go for little peepsies and his poopsies. Isn't that right, Biscuit? And it made for a really interesting road trip experience. I've never been on a road trip that long before, and I managed to find 2 pretty beautiful pet-friendly hotels along the way. One of them was in like central France near Poitiers, and that was just like a nice sensibly sized room on the ground floor. We could let Biscuit outside, very, very chill. And the second one we had was just near Madrid in Spain, and I believe it was in Toledo, and it was this beautiful like illuminated castle, which I just totally didn't expect for a pet-friendly hotel. And Biscuit loved it. The stone floor. He could jump up on the bed if he wanted to. He could bother us. He could run around, look off the balcony and bark. You were loving it, weren't you? Yes, you were. Yes. Right, do you want to go back to your little beds then? Little beds, you've been busy being famous. Yes. Me and Louis shared the driving, and I must admit though, Louis did a little bit more driving than I did, but I quite enjoy driving. I find it quite therapeutic, and it was very interesting to drive through 2 countries and see so many different types of landscapes and all sorts of like different scenes, even the soil texture. Every now and then I'd notice that it had completely changed from where we just were, like driving down the hemisphere of Earth, if you like. But we arrived safely, we arrived safe and sound, and I've been thoroughly enjoying living in southern Spain. It's taken me a little while to adjust. Obviously, I'm not fluent in Spanish at all. Everyone is so friendly, everything has been really straightforward. Luckily, I'm almost in a weird way like waiting for the problem to happen, because I'm always so used to being like, right, there's a big obstacle, we need to tackle the obstacle. And so far so good. I mean, I'm not going to try and like jinx it, but haven't seen the obstacle just yet. But we are settling in quite lovely. I've still got so many boxes to undo, but that is the nature of moving, you know, that is the nature. I'm thoroughly loving as well my new setup here, my new studio setup. I feel like I can finally actually start making things look like the way I want them to. I will be doing a camera collection video on my second channel soon enough, because lots of people have asked me what's in the background of all these, like what these little bits are, what they're doing, like what's all these? Oh, you Baphomet, girls, Baphomet, Satan. And you know what? We are fully in the Christmas season here. And my dad is coming to stay with us for Christmas, which I'm actually quite looking forward to. It will be the first time I've hosted a guest in our new space. And I think it will just make a really interesting experience. And being able to show him like the things that I've learned so far, the places that we found that we really enjoy, and also take like Biscuit for nice walks and stuff through the mountains. Ugh, the mountains here, the mountains, the views are just phenomenal. And I cannot wait to see what 2025 has in store for me here. Well, my lovelies, that's about it, honestly. I'm sure a lot more has happened to me this year, but those are like the ups and downs, the major plot points that I seem to be having every single year. I would quite like to now just have a bit of a chill year. And be able to expand my career into more travel photography, travel and cinema. That would be nice, wouldn't it? I am always open to suggestions for new content here on this channel, for new series to watch from the annals of time itself. I have a couple of new seasons of things on the horizon, and I think you'll be pretty shocked to watch it, because I know I definitely am going to be. Scandals on the way, my lovelies, scandals on the way. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful new year, and I will see you in 2025. My goodness, quarter of a century. Orkos Samoji, Ari Adia X, Asgardians, Becky Johnson, Bex Max 3000, Cameron Pittman, Shell Herman, ContraPoints, Vince Dunham, James Azengirl, Jenny Wood, Leanne Jones, Lenore, Les Banana, Marzipan, Mo Sherman, Morgan LeVay, Ms. Kiss, Paula Rivera, Sky Dorim, Steffi Tech, and TNS Mum.